Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of GSRC's Wheel Spin. I'm your host Samuel Reiman and alongside me we have Joe Peak and Sean Ambrose. Welcome guys.
Thanks for having us on again, Sam. I'm glad to be back after a while.
Alright, well we have just had the greatest month of racing basically. We've seen the Coca-Cola 600, the Indianapolis 500, the Monaco Grand Prix. Also, although it's not regarded as a great race, the Canadian Grand Prix, I think, always puts on a great show. And, of course, the 24-hour of LeMans last weekend. So, all of that racing has just taken place. Not all of those races were spectacular, though, however. And one race that's got a lot of people up in arms right now, of course, is the most recent one, the 24-hour of LeMans. A lot of talk about over-regulation going on over there and the fact that Toyota really didn't have much of a competitor at this year's race, and for some people that ruined the show. Now, Joe, I know you've been holding some opinions on this, so would you like to share them?
I think a lot of people aren't going to like me for this one, but I'm actually in favor of the BOP that's used by the ACO over there. I know a lot of people don't like it because they feel like it's a little bit contrived, but I feel like it's kind of a necessary evil. I feel like sports car racing will fall victim to what you see in Formula One if you don't do BOP, where the teams just spin themselves to death. It keeps things in check. It does put on good racing, and a lot of series that are multi-make now do use this. I mean, the other options are a spec series or just you dump enough cash in it to win. So I think of those three, like I said, necessary evil, I'd go with the BOP.
Sean?
I've got an opinion on the BOP, and Joe may not like me for this. So, listen, 60 cars started in that field. The vast majority of them were subjected to, let's face it, what in my opinion were inaccurate BOP settings. Okay, I mean, all you have to do is look at who won the race in all the classes. Sans maybe the GTE field, the GT. Well, I don't know, maybe the GTE field, the GTE Pro field. But I don't know, Joe. All right, so in the LMP1 field, Toyota dominates. Well, okay, so Audi got their 4 rings and they bailed last year. Porsche bailed the year before them. It's them and a bunch of non-hybrid teams. Basically. Yeah,
well, I mean, that
to
me is a little bit of a different beast, though, is when you get to the prototypes. I'm definitely more talking about the GT level of things.
Sure.
I mean, everybody knew as soon as we knew that it was just Toyota that was going to be racing that race, that it was going to be an easy romp for them. I mean, it wasn't guaranteed, and everybody who was rooting for Toyota was probably crossing their fingers, knowing their luck. But, I mean, I don't know what more they could have done on that end. It was the only factory-backed team. It was heavily weighted in their favor, and they would have had to have severely handicapped them if they wanted to try and make everything pretty equal with the independents.
Can I want to butt in here and say my problem with BOP, because I'm not a huge fan of it. My problem with it, Joe, is that I feel like sports car racing is the one kind of racing still out there that could have a win on Sunday, sell on Monday appeal to it. Every other form of motor racing kind of, they're not the cars you see on the street. And I just feel that with that regard, it would be nice to see all those manufacturers competing for the title of that win with what they have, from the roadside, the technology that they can come up with there, without any.
I would almost argue back that the only other series where you see that race on Sunday, sell on Monday is NASCAR, and that really doesn't apply to that anymore because again it's a spec series effectively. I mean, there's very little each manufacturer can do. And if you look at the series that do have manufacturer involvement, if anything, GT racing is where you still have tons of manufacturers in there. Because, like I said, it's not just an endless money pit, and they know that they can go in, get the exposure they want, and still be reasonably competitive. So I get what you're saying, but I think the world that we live in, unfortunately, is not still using that same idea of race on Sunday, sell on Monday, at least how it used to be.
Okay, I got one more point. And Joe, I'm not picking on you, buddy. I'm really not. But explain to me then what happens in the GTE Pro field where Porsche goes 1 and 2, and then go on down to the GTE Am field, and Dempsey Proton wins in their Porsche. Which, by the way, very, very happy for Patrick and the team. I was really, really happy to see that. But, those fields were dominated by Porsche. What happened to Ford?
Might be having a little bit of technical difficulties with Joe here, but
well, yeah. Sam.
Okay, I think I can hear you now.
Okay,
sorry about that.
All right, that's all right.
Do you want to start over on that, Sean?
No, did you hear Sean's question?
I did not hear Sean's question. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Sean.
All right. Oh, I said I'm not picking on you, but explain to me then what happened in both GTE fields with Porsche dominating 1-2 in the GTE Pro field, and then, of course, in the Am field, Dempsey Proton Porsche winning.
The only answer I can give to that is the thing that I know a lot of people don't like about BOP, which is that it's not always they're not going to get it right every time. They can try their best, but, I mean, again, to me, it's still the most appealing out of all of them, just because it gives the best racing, and it keeps the racing going as well. I've honestly... If anything, I guess I should say that is a valid point, and I have no rebuttal for that, and you're right. So,
yeah, I'm sure the boys in Detroit are not going to be happy, and will in fact somehow try and answer that before next year.
Let's mention one thing we can all agree with, and that's that pretty much no matter how it happened, everyone is happy for Toyota, and and it is a bit of a shame that they got it once Audi was out of the door. But talking about winning an event and then, it having a lot of success and then abandoning something like Audi kind of has with the FIA WEC, let's take out on a smaller scale what Nico Rosberg did over in the Formula One world. Let's go to another big race that just happened in the last month, the Indianapolis 500. Does Will Power go bye-bye now that he's finally got that Indy 500 win under his belt?
Oof. Same reaction there. I had that thought once he won it. I was like, well, he's got a championship. He's got the Indy 500. I mean, what else does he want in the series? And I think it'll depend on if he wins the championship this season. I think if he gets a second one, for him, it'll be like, you know what, let's bow out on a high note. And I've got everything I want at this point. Like, what more could he achieve, at least in Indy Car? I could see him going over to sports cars, maybe doing something else. But and maybe this is me just appreciating drivers who do bow out on a high note and don't kind of fade out. But I would like to see that with Will. I would like to see, if he wins the championship, just say, "This is my swan song. Thank you for the time, and I'm going to say goodbye now."
How about the run Ed Carpenter had? Oh. That was the best 500 performance of his career, hands down, man.
He's got to be disappointed. You could tell he was disappointed, though.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder how much longer Ed can go on doing this. I don't know. He is kind of handicapping himself. Yes, I mean, he is only focuses on the ovals, and he is doing it every year, but he's not getting the same experience that everybody around him is. Especially, now that they're in the new car and everything. Obviously, hasn't hindered him too much, like you said, his best result. But I don't know. I know everybody wants him to win one, but sometimes I want to see new blood come in, and Ed's been holding on to this for a long time.
Well, I would say universally, I think everybody found that podium, even though there were no real podiums at Indy, but that podium to be a fan favorite with Dixon rounding out the top three there, coming back, of course, after that crash last year.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of age over experience over youth right there, getting the top finishes. By the way, we don't need to go into MotoGP, but kudos Valentino Rossi over in MotoGP. He's currently sitting second in the points, even, I think, what's he, 35, 36 now, which is about 80-something in motorcycle racing years. Kudos to him.
I would agree. He is a bad man on two wheels, that's for sure.
What other old racing drivers have been making headlines nowadays? There's been a lot of those. There's some Spanish guy in there. Going back to our whole LeMans deal. I mean, is this kind of a bad thing for IndyCar? I mean, it's a great thing for IndyCar that a lot of experienced drivers want to go over there right now. But if you pull in all these Alonsos and keep in all these Carpenters and, if willpower does stay, is that gonna end up, is more drivers flock into the series who have established their names in other series? Is that going to make it harder for people to step up into IndyCar through Indy Lights?
I think it will to an extent, but I guess it might be a case of me selling Indy Lights short, but I don't feel like we've seen it. It's very hit or miss to me. I don't know if Sean feels differently, but I don't think success in Indy Lights guarantees you success in IndyCar. It's kind of like GP2, or I guess Formula 2 now, that it just because you have success there doesn't mean when you step up to the big boys that you're a great driver with more power and more downforce. So I don't know.
I agree with you 100%, Joe. I'm with you there. To extend that point a little bit, though, when you talk about guys going over in sports car racing in Europe, that's IMSA's big failure here in this country. Man, this country is full of great road circuits, street circuits, you name it, where we could be doing great sports car racing right here in the United States. And let's face it, it doesn't have near the pull it does on the European continent.
Are you saying you'd like to see more of an international flavour over in IMSA there, Sean?
Well, sure, absolutely. I would love IMSA to be the destination where everybody came and wanted to run, or a good split or a nice even balance between the two. But that's just not the way it is.
No, it is at Daytona. I feel that 24 hours of Daytona has a lot of pull, but you're right on the other tracks. Yeah, that's about it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, and Daytona's a special case too, as well, because that's off season. So I think that's probably a bigger reason why it's got international pull, is all the drivers don't have their season started yet, and so they have the time to come over and have some fun.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about the fact that the 24 Hour of Le Mans, at least in the LMP1 division, there, the end result was kind of predictable. Something now, a series that always gets that complaint that the race winner is predictable for about the last 20 or so years is Formula One. However, the last three races, although they have been won from pole in every single race, every one of those win from poles has not only been from a different driver, but a driver from a different team. With Formula One saying it's going to simplify the wins for next season, which hopefully will create better racing there, is Formula One really in the crisis we're giving it, considering the fact we do have three competitive teams right now, and Liberty Media is looking at ways to simplify the aerodynamics on those cars? Sean and Joe.
I was going to let you go.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm sorry. All right. Well, listen, Sam. Okay. So Ecclestone's gone. We have, the media company involved now. They're trying to put an entertaining product on the track, but I'd like to think it has to happen in baby steps, that too much of this for the manufacturers may really turn everybody against the current ownership group. But boy, I think they're having a tough time getting there. I kind of like the package they have now. It's still the same problem. You have the haves and the have-nots. Until they can find a way to control spending, I don't know, Sam. I don't know if the playing field will ever really level out. It'll be the haves and the have-not. Now, it is great to see three different winners in the last three races. Monaco in particular, man, I was so happy to see Ricciardo win after what happened a couple years ago, that bad pit stop and coming back and finally getting it. That was a popular win for me, but I thought the race was eventful. It certainly was eventful for Alonso and Hartley and maybe a couple other guys.
Yeah. So sometimes I've got to be honest, with the Monaco Grand Prix, it almost feels like, it's got that vibe of a greatest day of racing. Fans watching it know that they're about to see two hard-fought races at the Indy 500 and Coke 600, and they're like, oh, well, what are we going to see at Monaco? Are we going to see another classic? Whereas, honestly, most years that's just not the case. It's the nature of a beast. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be hard to get good races at Monaco with how things are. And going back to what was said before about is it as bad of a crisis as we're making it out to be with F1? I actually think this is the first year since the hybrid cars came in that they've finally got a really good mix of competitive teams. I mean, we've seen that, like you said, the number of winners that we've had, the fact that each week going in, we really don't know who's going to win or can't place a safe bet on anybody. So to me, even though I'm not a fan of the higher downforce, the teams are finally getting competitive. So that's kind of tricky for me because I do want to see the downforce taken away. I feel like IndyCar has taken a good step in that direction, and F1 should follow. But at the same time, I'm like, all right, we're finally getting it right. Do we want to mess with it?
I heard an interesting quote the other day from someone who was upset with the direction of NASCAR in recent years, and they said NASCAR tried to do they sat a long time doing nothing when stuff needed to be done, and then once they realised, oh dear, things aren't going the right way, they tried to do too much at once to catch up. Sean, I know you're a big follower of NASCAR. Would you agree with that statement? And do you see the same thing happening in Formula One, IndyCar, or any other sports?
Whew, man, I sure hope they don't follow that model. If I'm just being frank, I think what they've done in NASCAR is hideous. Just from a competition standpoint, it's crazy. I think it's gone off the rails, to be honest with you. These templates that I don't know. Okay, so here's the old guy saying, let's go back to the way it was, and when drivers could drive cars, and sometimes it's really not a bad idea. I don't know. Like, we know how Lewis Hamilton can handle an old school Formula One car because we've seen him do it, and he had a blast driving it. I know there's safety issues and all that, but I don't think I'll ever be a fan of just the cookie cutter track or the cookie cutter car.
So, do you see the same problem with other sports? What's been the biggest bad decision you think NASCAR's made in the last 10 years, Sean? And which other forms of motor racing are you worried are going to follow the same pitfall?
Okay, NASCAR, biggest probably mistake they made in the last 10 years. I'm going to say the point system. I'll never be a fan of what they did with it in the stage racing. I'm sorry, that's just not racing. That's not the way it was intended. That's not the way they drew up. It's not the way they drew it up in the sand back in the 40s and the 50s when they got started doing that. And that's when people were rabid fans, and on through the 70s and even into part of the 80s. But it seems like there was just a universal change at some point, and that includes Formula One, that includes IndyCar, all of them. And maybe it was safety related. Maybe you could just pin it on safety alone, but yeah, man, I go back to the point system. I think that's the single biggest thing, and I hope other racing entities don't try to create championships or drama like that.
Okay, but it's interesting. You say point system, and then you said stage racing. So your problem with stage racing isn't the breaking up of a race, it's the fact that they're awarding points based on what's happening in the middle of a race.
Okay, But you used to be able to get bonus points regardless. Under the old Winston Cup point system, you laps led, halfway. I mean, there were always extra points paid out. I don't think you need to break the flow of a race by throwing a mandatory caution at the end of 33 laps to award points. I just think it's senseless. It's just, again, I don't like creating situations. I like letting things be organic and just kind of flow as they happen.
Is it okay if I jump in on that one? Because I think I mentioned this on the show before that honestly, IMSA was even doing that before NASCAR implemented it, just in a different manner in their endurance races where, like you said, awarding points at halfway. But they didn't stop the race. And that's kind of how I feel about it, is I'm okay with the stage racing. It creates some interesting incentives for the drivers, especially if it's a longer race, which is a whole other thing if we talk about they need to shorten the races. But yeah, I mean, for the longer races, offer up like a quarter, halfway, 3/4 of the way, or however we want to split it up, that you offer points, but don't stop the race. You don't need the cautions. Let it go.
Yeah, I want to see somebody run 50, 60 laps wide open under green flag, and let's see what happens.
I've got to say this much. I was not a fan of stage racing until I saw it being used for the first time on the short track. Because then you got those drivers, at a 1.5 mile speedway, if you're running 11th and there's 1 lap to go until the end of a stage, you can't afford to wreck your car for 10th place at a 1.5 mile track where you're going 200 miles an hour. At Martinsville, screw it, you can, and so I did start to learn to like stage racing once I saw, I think Kyle Busch fell from 1st to 10th once the first time they ended the stage at Martinsville because they were banning fenders so much. Or maybe it was just 1st to 3rd. I don't know. He wasn't happy anyway. Kyle Busch was never happy if he's not in 1st. But, I want to throw a controversial point out here. And, Joe, you might shoot me down on this. I think the only thing that stops one of the only things that stops Formula One from being as entertaining as IndyCar on some road courses is that Formula One doesn't throw safety car periods as often. When you do get Formula One races that are affected by more than one safety car period, I think you do see the same kind of unpredictability that you do in a regular IndyCar road course race.
Yeah, and it's a very different mentality, but I find it interesting because when we get on that topic of road course yellows on the iRacing forums, it is very touchy. And a lot of the European drivers come in and say, please no. They're vehemently against it because Americans are much more used to safety cars coming in. That said, I feel like a mix is good. I mean, too many of them gets really annoying. It slows down the pace of the race. It doesn't do anything more than having 1 or 2 during a race. But having none of them can make it pretty processional. And we have seen that from time to time in IndyCar as well. If anything, I really like the virtual safety car that Formula One has introduced. I feel like that is a positive step because it's kind of a good balance. It doesn't interrupt the racing too much. It keeps safety in mind. And it gives some interesting strategic choices there. So I feel like that's something that other series need to look into because we've seen something sort of similar with the slow zones in the LeMans series.
And of course, so it's not just open wheel racing that's going to be racing over on the road courses this weekend. We've got IndyCar at Road America and also Formula One going back to France. That'll be definitely interesting to see. I always love it when F1 goes to a new track, as always the nature of unpredictability there.
Not technically a new track.
Yeah, it's true. But Sean, NASCAR also going to be doing those right turn thingies at Sonoma.
Yeah. Boy, they could find a better track to do that on.
I've got to admit, it's not my
I'm sorry, that's
favorite
personal
road
bias. It's personal bias.
I'm not going to argue with you there.
Yeah, hey, listen. I love it. I really, really think they need 2 more road course races in their schedule. I love seeing them kind of have to get out of their element. And let's face it, there are guys who are really good. Kurt Busch always comes to mind. Man, he's a heck of a road racer. Jimmy Johnson is no slouch at all, just like his old teammate Jeff Gordon. There's a lot of guys who can wheel it really, really well. Kyle Busch, of course. He's going to be a favorite. Harvey, Kevin Harvick, man. Kevin's really solid on the road courses too. So I think that's going to be an exciting race on Sunday. I really do.
Do you feel? I know we've seen a little bit more processional races as the years have gone on. It's Sean over in NASCAR, or at least right now, it seems that there's really only three or four teams that can win a NASCAR race, unless it becomes a bit unpredictable with a late caution or a late strategy call. Those being Harvick, Truex, Kyle Busch, and then I guess you could throw someone like Larson or that in it. Obviously, Sonoma's going to be a nice break from that. Do you think that is one thing that NASCAR has to worry about, or do you like seeing the seasons where, that there's a couple of drivers that kind of stand out from the rest of the field?
You know what? I think NASCAR's probably doing as much as they can right now. I think some of these young drivers need to, because let's face it, there's a handful of young drivers, really, really young talent that right now is, they find themselves in great equipment, but the wins aren't coming yet. Is that because of the dominance of the more experienced drivers? I think it's experience right now kicking the butt of the young guys. And you know what? As soon as they get their feet under them, watch out. Listen, William Byron is not driving a piece of junk. Okay, that Hendrick car is fast, and he's going to figure it out. I think Bubba Wallace is going to figure it out. I think Ricky Stenhouse, Austin Dillon, I think they all have great futures. I just think it's experience. Listen, Kevin Harvick is experienced. Kyle Busch, experienced. Martin Truex, man, Martin struggled for a long time before he became a winning driver, and so I just think the reason we're seeing that dominance at the top right now is because not enough of the young guys have started to really get their feet under him yet.
I'd almost argue that we got a little spoiled with in the past maybe decade or so with a number of young phenoms coming in and really rattling the cages of a lot of series, both Formula One, Indy Car. You'd get it a little bit in NASCAR some years ago. And maybe we're getting back to how things were, which I think is a good thing, honestly, is where you have to, pay your dues, earn your stripes, and work your way up the ladder. Joseph Newgarden in particular comes to mind on that. It took me a while to really kind of agree with the people that he was an up-and-coming star because I was kind of watching and seeing a little bit of results here and there. But when he started winning races, I was in full agreement because when it started coming, it was like it clicked for him. And it was clear that he had found what he needed from, like Sean said, the experience. Youthful energy can only do so much for you and raw talent. You have to get out there and you have to practice and you have to earn it.
Yes. Like I said, I was about to ask if you wondered the fact that we're seeing so much of the experienced drivers win this year was a sign that maybe the cars were getting a little bit easier to drive. But obviously it's not the case. You do point out there is still something to be said for youth, younger drivers still able to get up there and run up front. Because they're a bit younger and maybe a little bit more athletic. But then I think also as a whole, in motor racing across the world, the drivers are getting a lot better at keeping up fitness routines, which is maybe why we're seeing more success from these experienced drivers, is because they're staying, when you stay fit, you're going to be around longer.
No more Nigel Mansells, huh?
Yeah, I think that day's gone. I think fitness has become a very, very big issue in NASCAR over the years, and I do know for a fact that Harvick spends a lot of time in the gym, and he's considered one of the older guys now. And Jimmy Johnson's workout regime has some history as well. So Mark Martin was another one of those guys that drove well into his late 40s, and trust me, shirt off Mark Martin is something that's, or at least back in the day, I hear was pretty impressive.
I'm going to say, how do you know
really
this, Sean?
Yeah, never me personally, yeah.
Okay, all right, we got a lot of good races coming up this weekend. Which ones are you almost looking forward to?
Sean?
Are we going to go...
You get that one first, Joe.
Yeah, no, I already see the predictable answers coming here. Joe, Road America, Sean, Sonoma, me, France. Sean, would you concur?
Yeah, actually, I'll have my eyes on France as well. I actually, because I'm looking forward to seeing Formula One there this weekend, and that's going to be an exciting race. Like I talked about earlier, I think Sonoma is going to, of all the races we've had so far this season, I think I'm looking forward to this one the most because I do like seeing NASCAR go to road courses. So looking forward to both of those. IndyCar, I've been a little slight on this year. Sans the 500 and then the race at Texas because it was my home track. I just haven't watched as much as I need to. But, France and Road America is, or I should say France and Sonoma are where my eyes are going to be.
I guess for me, I'm going to go with the obvious answer, which is France, because I'm very curious to see how the track does with the modern cars. The last time it saw F1 cars actually competing, because I think they've had some testing, was 1990 was the last time it held a GP. So I really want to see if it puts on a good show, because I wasn't the biggest fan of Magny Cours in the first place. So if Paul Ricard is able to have some good racing, then I'm all thumbs up. If it doesn't, then I feel like they really need to go somewhere else. I know they're limited based on the FIA grade of the track, but I don't know. We've seen a couple of the same tracks year after year with France, and if it puts on a boring show, it's like, guys, go somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the French Grand Prix just because I love, the unpredictability that a new circuit throws into any kind of motor racing series, particularly for me, Formula One. Secondly, I agree with Sean. I love seeing the NASCARs go to road courses just because they're out of their element. Okay, yes, these drivers have learnt to adapt to road courses, but the cars are still huge, bulky things that, have got to navigate all of these tight curves, which can be entertaining to watch. And that's not to say I don't think that the IndyCar race at Road America is going to be good as well. There's always, a competitive nature to IndyCars on a road course race. And Road America, I think, is such a fantastic circuit because of a number of passing opportunities.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I feel like Road America kind of got the shaft on our show this week because none of us nominated it. But it's not that I don't enjoy it. It's just I feel like like you guys said, the novelty of the other two are kind of overshadowing it. If anything, I think Road America should put on a great show. It's just it's up against hard competition this week.
I'm going to agree with you 100% there, too, Joe. You know what else is getting overshadowed? Pikes Peak. The hill climb's going
my
on
home
this
race.
week, too.
My home race.
Yes.
Okay. With that regards, can I say a big congratulations to, let me double check I get his name right, Hickman, the winner of a senior TT, a new lap record at the Isle of Man TT, the Snaefell Mountain course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
Under 17 minutes now. My dad always tells me stories because my dad used to go to the Isle of Man TT as a spectator. He said the first guy to break 200 miles an hour there, 100 mile an hour average lap time there, which was like 20 minutes at the time, said that lap will never be beaten. If you go any faster than that, you're pushing death too far. And now they found another three minutes out of it. So that tells you how dangerous that thing is. I gotta go there one day. That's on the bucket list. But.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having that one on my bucket list either. I'll consider it added.
Joe, you into those two wheel, or you prefer being a bit safe, not insane?
Oh no, insane's fine as long as I'm just watching it. I want no part of it myself.
Sean's racing days are over, I think.
Yes, they're well behind me.
Well, we would like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in and listening to us jibber-jabber for half an hour here. Joe, Sean, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep. All right. And as always, take care, everyone. Race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.